It's election season! You know what that means? It's time for all the worthless fucking ideologues of the world to take time out of complaining that Magic the Gathering feminists are gonna steal their anime titties and pretend that they know anything about politics. But wait a minute, according to people who definitely aren't Nazis and just happen to have Iron Cross avatars, I'm also just a worthless ideologue. Well, that's great! That means I can get in on the action!
Lock your doors, activate your ray shield, settle in around the blessed computer monitor, and crack open a boy with your cold ones. It's time for Electionwatch 2017! There's a bird in the rafters and I don't know how to get it out because it's scared of me, so it just goes away. How the hecking frig did we get here? Well, our story begins in 2015, when David Cameron, amidst hemorrhaging votes to further right parties calling to leave the EU and his own party's infighting about whether they wanted to remain or not, decided to defer this problem by pledging that if elected, he would hold a referendum on Britain's EU membership. After losing this election to Cameron, despite living up to his party's principles of not having any anymore, Ed Miliband resigned as Labour leader, triggering a leadership election. Among the folks running for leader was Jeremy Corbyn, on a platform of anti-austerity and anti-being almost exactly like the Tories. To run for leader, you need nominations from other MPs, and, for a joke, several MPs nominated him, certain he wouldn't actually win. Unfortunately for them, it turns out that Labour's membership weren't in on the joke, because the completely unelectable Corbyn was elected to the party leadership with the largest majority ever, even more than Tony Blair. Then the Brexit referendum came. Cameron's strategy of hoping the Conservatives would figure out their stance on Brexit before the referendum failed, with half his MPs going out in a giant bus with a lie on it to talk about how much cake we export to France and tell us about how the money birds will leave the EU with us and come back to build hospitals with magic, and the other half defending remaining on the admittedly shaky ground that it's a good idea and better for everyone. MPs on the Remain side included David Cameron, George Osborne, Philip Hammond, and Home Secretary Theresa May, who fucking loved being in the European Union.
And when I put all that together, when I think about the potential risk to jobs, the uncertainties for our economy if we were to leave, I do believe we are more secure in the EU.
Keep an eye on her, I have a feeling she'll come up later. Labour was far less divided on Brexit, campaigning on the unified principles of remaining being good and trying to sabotage Corbyn's leadership and their own party along with it. Now, strangely enough, amidst the ruling party having no idea which was the better option, and the opposition being too busy trying to kill itself, the Remain message got somewhat muddled, and the referendum ended narrowly in favour of Britain leaving the European Union. Victorious, having finally gotten what he wanted and realising the time had come to settle in and get some actual work done sorting things out and negotiating exactly how we leave, core Leave campaigner Nigel Farage moved to America. Not that I'm criticising him, I think Farage has a point here. Who'd want to live in Britain? After all, we're leaving the European Union. Managing Brexit, we had David Cameron, who'd ruled out resigning if the referendum didn't go his way, and like Tories are known to do, committed to keeping his promises.
In a way, there's a link to the decision to resign as Prime Minister. The country made a decision I advised against, but nonetheless, the decision's been made. I want the government to successfully pursue that decision and to get it right.
Great! Another leadership election. Luckily, since all the major pro-Brexit MPs had realised they didn't actually want to have to deal with this shit and faded into the background, pro-Remain MP Theresa May won in a short landslide, in prime position to negotiate doing what she'd said just a few months prior would be a horrible mistake. Meanwhile, in Labour's camp, Labour ministers deliberated and, after losing a referendum because they were too busy trying to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn, concluded that the problem was Jeremy Corbyn and tried to get rid of him.
I think Jeremy's position is now untenable, and being the decent man that he is, I hope he will recognise that and step down.
That way they could get back to fulfilling Labour's destiny of being completely ineffective. In her resignation letter, former Shadow First Secretary of State Angela Eagle wrote to Corbyn, "Under your leadership, the case to remain in the EU was made with half-hearted ambivalence. I have come to the conclusion that you are not the right person to lead the party." That's right, according to Eagle, Corbyn simply hadn't campaigned hard enough, and that's what cost them the referendum. Unfortunately for her, many within Labour thought Corbyn had campaigned harder than anyone else and simply hadn't had any representation because the media were too busy reporting the Conservative infighting. One minister even wrote, "Jeremy is up and down the country pursuing an itinerary that would make a 25-year-old tired. He has not stopped. We are doing our best, but if we're not reported, it's very difficult." Strong, inspiring words from that MP. What was their name again? Oh yeah, Angela Eagle. Wait, hold on a second. After a mass resignation, calls for Corbyn himself to resign, and a vote of no confidence, Labour had its second leadership election in a year. True to her confusing and contradictory words, Angela Eagle proved how unelectable Corbyn was by running against him and then dropping out after 8 days. But soon MPs figured out that they were sure they'd found the electable candidate, falling in line behind Owen Smith and, ready to get back to business, Smith spectacularly lost to Jeremy Corbyn, who won with an even larger percentage of the vote than he did last time, making him the most elected leader of Labour again, even more this time. It seems that Labour is definitively stuck with the unelectable weirdo that no one wants, simply down to the fact that people want him there. Democracy's really confusing sometimes. Anyway, now that both parties had their leadership sorted out, we could finally get down to the brass tacks of actually negotiating Brexit. But then it turned out that no one knows what Brexit means.
Brexit means Brexit.
Yeah? Alright, yep. Okay.
People talk about the sort of Brexit that there is going to be. Is it hard, soft? Is it grey, white? Actually, we want a red, white and blue Brexit. That is the right Brexit for the United Kingdom.
Red, white and blue Brexit? So 3 Brexits? Or do all 3 cumulatively mean 1 Brexit singularly? I'm glad we have the daughter of a vicar working all this out. She'll be great at answering questions of consubstantiation. May was finally in prime position to handle these difficult negotiations out of the union she didn't want to leave, and luckily she could focus all of her time and effort onto it because she had ruled out a snap election. And like Tories are known to do, she committed to keeping her promises.
The government should call a general election.
Oh wait, I meant the opposite of that. So, here we are now, attempting to negotiate one of the most important diplomatic deals in the history of our country, and being made to choose between a man who didn't want to leave but at least his party membership wanted him in charge, and a woman who didn't want to leave but whose party membership aren't even allowed to vote on who gets to be leader. For the pro-Brexit lot, it's a bit like having to choose between a rock and a hard place with a dementia tax. But don't worry, I'm certain the electorate will continue to make the shittest possible choice. Part 2. Media bias. But enough about how we got here. What about how the media talks about all of this? Let's look at how they talk about Jeremy Corbyn for a little bit. Many Labour MPs were certain he was unelectable, and the totally unbiased media made sure you knew those opinions ahead of even knowing why he was unelectable. But a couple of people think you wouldn't want to elect him, and it's imperative that you know they think that. Over and over, forever. For a time, the early stories about the Corbster resembled an angry text algorithm generating random complaints based on the angle of his bow, or offhand comments about how world peace would be nice. It was almost as if Corbyn's actually left-wing policies threatened huge companies like News Corp, and they felt the need to smear him in order to try and destroy him. I mean, almost. I mean, a little bit, maybe. National anthem, outrage. Corb snubs the Queen. Court jester. We put a hat on him so you know he's bad. The new Labour leader treated himself to a black cab at his home yesterday, abandoning the Chairman Mao style bicycle his neighbours always see him riding. What's Maui about it exactly? Like, what? I revealed how Jeremy Corbyn welcomed the prospect of an asteroid wiping out humanity. He has also called for the legalization of the possession of cannabis. Wait, hang on. I thought you didn't want us to elect him. Labour in meltdown. Corbyn, abolish the army. New leader's potty plan for world peace. Free rugby attacks cards. Did I wake in a foreign country? This is what happens when you elect a vegetarian to lead a What? What does that have to do with anything? I retire from the army in 6 months. He can knock himself out. Good lad. He'll be gone from his job before you are yours. They're so mad, they even recycled some old propaganda they used with the last Labour leader. It got so bad that at one point the Mail on Sunday ran a hit piece with the title "Labour must kill vampire Jezza," only 10 days after the actual brutal murder of Labour MP Joe Cox. Luckily, someone eventually realised that this was something of a bad look, and the online version changed its title slightly. Corbyn signals sky-high immigration would continue under Labour. Continue from who? From who? Who's in charge here? And let's not forget this piece of speculative fiction the Mail on Sunday actually printed about a prospective Jeremy Corbyn leadership. Prime Minister Corbyn and the 1,000 days that destroyed Britain, as this brilliant imagining of a Corbyn premiership, fuck you, reveals Tories who gloat over Labour's woe should be careful what they wish for. The night sky over London was thick with choking black smog. By the way, Theresa May abolished the Climate Council. You might want to retract that bit. Not for him, the Prime Minister's Jaguar in which his hated Mrs. Thatcher had departed on the night she, too, was deposed. All government cars had long since been sold in a desperate bid to pay off the 3 trillion national debt. Corbyn's Chief of Staff, Owen Jones, declared that the people had taken back their country. The red flag was hung from the windows of number 10. Russell Brand kept his garbled verbosity in check for once and simply tweeted, "Yes!" Meanwhile, the media reporting the growing opposition to the government and the whispers of a no-confidence vote in the House of Commons were accused of treachery. The far left had always believed that their inability to win elections was due to the machinations of right-wing press barons who poisoned the people's minds against... How can you not realise that you are doing that? You're literally publishing fan fiction in which Jeremy Corbyn destroys Britain. What the fuck? Ironically, it was Corbyn's better nature that finally defeated him. He lacked the Stalinist zeal to force the people into submission. British Airways reported ticket sales on first-class flights out of London, and none at all coming back. One Direction went off on a US tour and never returned. Okay, this is actually starting to sound pretty good now. Now, you might be inclined to say that a media willing to publish 2,600 words of fanfiction about how Jeremy Corbyn destroyed Britain could be a little bit biased against Corbyn and his politics, and perhaps distorting his views somewhat. You know, maybe a little bit. But let's be fair, media bias? Where's your proof that's happening, you ask? And you're right. Ignoring the wealth of evidence I've just provided for a second, I don't have any proof that the media is misrepresenting Corbyn and his views. All I have is eyes that read newspapers, a functioning brain, and a study by the London School of Economics showing that around 75% of press coverage of Corbyn and his views misrepresented him, and only 11% of the total coverage didn't distort any of his views whatsoever, with the Daily Express and Daily Mail failing to provide any such coverage at all. Jeremy Corbyn is completely unelectable. Nobody likes him. And we know this, said the media, because we keep lying about him. But eventually, the media started to find things they could smear him about, because they might actually be true. For example, many have accused Corbyn of being soft on terrorism and the IRA. Did you appear in a picture with the bad people, Jeremy? Are you friends with the bad people, Jeremy? Did you personally bomb the pub, Jeremy, before riding off in your Mao-esque bicycle or in your Stalin-adjacent weather balloon? We here in My Shed can bring you a special report detailing all of Corbyn's shady dealings with the IRA. During the 1980s, Corbyn spoke openly with both Irish Republicans and Ulster Loyalists in an attempt to bring about a peaceful resolution to the Irish conflict. During this period of openness, Margaret Thatcher was giving long speeches explaining that it was wrong to negotiate with terrorists, which it later turned out from declassified documents she literally was doing in secret. In 1994, Corbyn signed a parliamentary motion on the 20th anniversary of the IRA pub bombing in Birmingham, a motion which called the attack a terrorist atrocity. In 1995, Corbyn met with Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness of Sinn Féin, the political wing of the Irish Republican movement, which you'll be shocked to discover are not a terrorist group unless people wanting to control their country terrifies you, in which case I hope you didn't vote Brexit. This happened either during or after the declaration that the Northern Irish had the right to self-determination, an event which led to the IRA ceasefire and quite directly to the disbanding of the organisation entirely. In 2013, Corbyn received the Gandhi Foundation International Peace Award for, among hard opposition to pointless wars, helping to bring a peaceful solution to the conflict in Northern Ireland. And that's it. Clearly, a man known to be flip-flopping on whether or not he likes the IRA. I can see how many Conservative ministers might be confused as to what side Corbyn was on. After all, it was a very confusing time for them. Their Prime Minister was secretly negotiating with the IRA while condemning the idea of negotiating with the IRA. I can see how it might have been difficult for them to fathom that there was a way of finding peace that didn't require lies, smear tactics, and back channels with terrorism. Maybe they're criticising Corbyn for not talking to the IRA in secret like they were, but none of this stopped the media from parading around the same couple of pictures again. It's important to guilt people by association. If you've met someone, you're guilty of all of their crimes, even ones they've never actually committed. Here's Corbyn with Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams. Here's Corbyn with Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams. Here's Prince Charles with Sinn Féin President Gerry... Oh dear, how did that get there? Here's Vampire Jezza having coffee with Martin McGuinness. Here's Corbyn hanging out with Martin McGuinness. And here's the Queen shaking hands with Martin... Wait, no, cut! Rewind the... Part 3. Will you kill millions, Jeremy? One other thing the media and opposition have managed to hammer Corbyn on is his stance on nuclear war. Corbyn thinks it's bad and should be avoided at all costs, the monster.
I find it incredibly concerning that you wouldn't ever commit to doing that. It's our safety that we need to look out first and foremost in your government.
Jeremy has trouble giving a satisfying answer to that question. You see, everyone expected him to immediately begin fantasizing about the deaths he'd be willing to cause if he was pushed to it, and imagine a situation where he would have to push it so he could simply say yes or no. But instead, he went into this long, thoughtful piece where he elaborated upon how even getting to that situation would put the world at tremendous risk, and the real solution is how you avoid doing that, but that he would obviously pursue it as a second-use policy. Naturally, people weren't happy with that kind of answer.
Would you allow North Korea or some idiot in Iran to bomb us? You'd be too late.
No, of
You're
course
gonna
not.
have to do it first, mate.
Will you kill millions, Jeremy? Will you kill millions, Jeremy? Jeremy, will you kill millions? You see, I'd love to vote for you, Jeremy, but as a Tory voter, I have this unquenchable thirst for blood that can only be satiated with the most powerful weapon ever conceived by mankind! The old adage is, speak softly and carry a big stick, not threaten everyone else who has a stick with your stick and then wonder why everyone else has started hitting you. If you position yourself as ready at any moment to hit the button, your enemy's prepared to hit theirs, and that's not a great situation for the, planet that we live on. First use isn't a self-defense mechanism, it's a self-destruct mechanism. There is no situation where a first use will be the only use, because the second use will be to kill us back. The times in history humanity has come the closest to nuclear war have been caused by one side becoming convinced the other fully intended to, and was just about to, launch their own weapons. An active strategy of de-escalation doesn't sound very jingoistic or protective, but it's literally the best option, and fantasizing about how your enemies are constantly waiting to use theirs the instant they smell weakness literally directly prolongs the problem. Luckily, it's unlikely either of these gentlemen will ever get their hands on the kill everyone death button, although thanks to a recent investigation for election fraud, I hear there might be an opening coming up in South Thanet.
Just before, I don't understand why everyone in this room seems so keen on killing millions of people with a nuclear bomb.
Part 4. The policy problem. But enough about the bikes Corbyn stole from history's greatest monsters and how despicable it is that he won't nuke people. What about both parties' actual policies? Labour have a 128-page manifesto detailing all their ideas, such as reducing class sizes in schools, investing in infrastructure, over $30 billion in funding for the NHS over the next parliament, and free school meals for every child. But where's the money for that gonna come from, Jezza? There's no magic money tree.
And we have to stop thinking, as you do, that there's a magic money tree. I mean, he has this money tree wish list in his manifesto.
And I'm being honest with you in terms of saying that we will put more money into the NHS.
Wait, no, don't
But
say
there
that.
isn't a magic money tree that we can shake that suddenly provides for everything that people want.
Teresa, someone's already used that one-liner. You probably should have watched the fucking debate, shouldn't you? Where's all the money gonna come from? Oh wait, the manifesto is fully costed, explaining how much every policy will cost in estimation, and how the money will be raised. For example, those free school meals I mentioned are estimated to cost £0.9 billion, and this cost will be covered by removing VAT exemption on private school fees, making the country around £1.2 billion, which actually puts the country further into the black than most austerity policies. So what about the Conservatives' books? Where does the money come from for their ideas? Well, nobody knows, because their smaller 88-page manifesto isn't costed.
It's very easy to think about how you spend money. It's much harder to think about how you raise money.
Yeah, it is pretty hard, isn't it? That's probably why the Conservatives didn't bother to check how much money their ideas would cost. Luckily, former Chancellor Ken Clarke came to the Tories' rescue by saying manifestos shouldn't be costed, because then the Chancellor can be flexible. If you make no falsifiable promises and don't tell anyone anything specific, then you can't be accused of not doing anything, like he used to. Vote Tory. We'll balance the books, although we don't know what's in them exactly. You're just going to have to trust us.
I'm going to turn to Amber Rudd. The question is about trusting the plans, and in your manifesto, there was a notable absence of costings.
Well, I would say, in answer to that question, judge us on our record. On our record, we have cut. Okay.
Alright, Amber, I get it. There's no magic money tree. Alright, what about the actual fucking trees? There's also the problem of what critics are calling the dementia tax. The manifesto lays out that the elderly must pay for their own care if they have savings in property worth more than £100,000. In other words, if they own a house, they'll probably have to sell it to pay for the care they'll need. Although if they don't want to lose their home for some reason, the payment can be deferred until after they die. How generous. Taxes like this ask important questions, such as, Part 5, are the Tories trying to throw the election? Are they trying to lose, so that when Labour or someone else inevitably don't get a great deal out of Brexit because Brexit was a bad idea, they can then spin it as their mistake? Or are they just so sure they're going to win that they don't even think they have to bother hiding their true ideas? Now, you might have expected Theresa May to defend her party's policies at the leaders' debate, but she didn't bother going to the leaders' debate. She instead sent Home Secretary Amber Rudd, seen before making the money tree comments. A little odd, traditionally, for the Prime Minister who thought it was an easy win to hide from being scrutinised.
Well, I'm interested, in the fact that Jeremy Corbyn seems to be paying far more attention to how many appearances on telly he's doing. I think he ought to be paying a little more attention to thinking about Brexit negotiations. That's what I'm doing to make sure we get the best possible deal for Britain.
Yes, I also wouldn't let myself be distracted from Brexit negotiations by having to go to a debate, or by, for example, calling an election. Must be distracting, Theresa, mustn't it? That election that you called. Remember the one you said you wouldn't? This level of incompetence is so exquisite that it almost has to have been managed. Hold on a second, Theresa. I really don't want to belabor this point, but the leaflet that got sent through my door says strong, stable leadership in the national interest. What leadership? You didn't turn up to the fucking debate, and you won't tell us who's going to be in your cabinet now! There's been an increase in the Tories complaining about how the media are biased against them, for example claiming the BBC used a purposefully biased audience against them in the leaders' debate, as if it is somehow possible to find an audience neutral on a party not being bothered to send their leader to the leader debate in an election they called. And to be fair, I am also myself a little bit biased. As a socialist, I'm biased in favour of peace, justice, humanity, healthcare, facts, and the truth. The Big Six, we call them. Trying to do their side a favour, The Sun attempted to spin the Tories' policies as good for millennials. For example, how awful would it be if Labour ended tuition fees? This would surely benefit richer families more. Poorer students would be left out in the dirt without even the warmth of debt for comfort. And taxes will be lighter on millennials under the Tories because they're shifting so much of the burden onto the elderly. Wow, the sun's finally coming up on Tory Britain now, isn't it? And now they're even saying make Britain great again, something you'd think they'd have done in the past 7 years they've had in government. But no, this time we promise cutting more stuff will work, but just don't ask us how much stuff we're cutting. This is the kind of strategy I would adopt if I wanted to lose the election on purpose, and I hope they are, because that way they're at least looking evil intentionally. And that's not even getting into the arms dealing with Saudi Arabia, which we should probably go into a bit, shouldn't we? Well, here's Nicholas Wilson, a campaigner for anti-corruption, trying to do just that on the 3rd of June.
Then she was in Saudi Arabia in April of this year, selling arms. Saudi Arabia are the country responsible for IS, and they support IS.
Oh, who's that over there? Surreptitiously handing a piece of paper to the chairman? That's Amber Rudd, the current Home Secretary and Theresa May's star debater.
We supply arms to Saudi Arabia through... Which is the person for attack I wish to avoid.
Why? I'm sorry. Come on.
This is censorship.
That's certainly one way of holding a debate. Now, I don't like being an alarmist sort of person, but honestly, seeing stuff like this happen in Britain is a little bit terrifying. And it leads me to ask the question, what if we're totally fucked? Now, the way the polls are looking, it seems like the Conservative Party are going to get the most votes, which, unfortunately, in our system, means they'll win. We're going to find out together the real cost of the dementia tax, of slashing budgets, of their bizarre opinions about cybersecurity and how basically you shouldn't be allowed to have any privacy. We're going to find out what that really means together over the next 4 years, barring some miracle. I became disillusioned with politics on the 5th of May 2011, when the referendum on alternative vote decided that no, you shouldn't be allowed to have a preference on who you would want to win if the party you actually like doesn't have enough votes, which effectively dooms the British left to dividing their vote 18 ways, whereas the right are very good at falling in line and only really hemorrhage their vote like 3 ways. Labour, the Lib Dems, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the Green Party, cumulatively, people in Britain favour left-wing ideas. That's almost objectively a fact. But the vote is split so many ways along often quite similar policies that the people don't get to have their vision realised, because the right-wing parties always get more votes collectively because there's less of them. The cynical old me would probably say that maybe we've already lost the battle for the soul of our electoral system. In my Brexit video, I talked about how there's this almost inherent flaw, even at the best of times in representative democracy, where you're always at the risk of generating a political elite who do the thinking for everyone else because they're the representatives, thus making people collectively stupider and worse at making these decisions. But in retrospect, I was wrong. I think the real problem is that maybe even when we know what we want, we lack the ability to properly express within our political system the thing that we want and get it. Maybe the next election is the one where things actually get better, and the next 5 years are a chance to prepare and regroup and really think about what our strategy should be, and that could be excellent. Hello? What? You're kidding? That's impossible. What?
They're back. After all this time, they're back. I thought they lied. I thought it was a story. But after these years, after all these long years, the money birds are finally home. Hey folks, the last video I got taken down with copyright stuff and I had to re-edit it a little bit, and then when I put it back up I messed up the credits, like half the names were missing. So I've decided to put them here, all the names that I missed. They're here now. I'm really sorry it happened, but by the time I noticed the problem I was not going to re-edit the video for a third time, and like 100,000 people had already seen it. So thank you to all of these people for being patient and waiting for their names to come up in the credits. Thank you very much for helping fund whatever the hell it is that I'm doing here. I'm really out of breath. I've been shouting about the money birds outside for like an hour, trying to get the take right. It probably looks terrible too. Anyway, see ya.